I want to say hello and good morning to our listeners from around the world. I want to welcome you to another fantastic edition of This Morning with Soulivity, broadcasting live from our studio right here in the nation's capital, Washington, D.C., and on KMET 1490 AM radio in Southern California. My name is Brian Wesley Johnson, and I'm joined today by two very special and beautiful friends, Sheila Applegate and Dr. Chanel DeGuzman. Good morning, ladies.
Good morning.
Good morning. Can you hear me
I
smiling?
could see that. I could see that. I could see that. That's so beautiful. Wow. We have not been together in a minute. I was on
Yeah.
vacation. Sheila, you were on vacation. Dr.
Mhm.
Chanel, you were hobnobbing with all these important people.
Yes. Oh my God. One night after the next.
But we're back in stride again.
Yes.
Um, Today is a really crazy day because I was thinking today was going to be like one of those days where we're talking about all the stuff that's happening in the world right now. I mean, it is like on fire, as my little nephew would say. Um, what are you guys thinking about everything that's happening right now? I mean, it seems like there's new news every single day.
Yeah, it's like a firestorm right now, Brian,
Yeah,
with so many different relevant, you know, potentially life-altering high stakes
yeah,
issues. But
right.
then also, we've got those storms and, just
Yeah.
my heart just goes out to, those who are suffering right now because of it. But then also you see the humanity of the donations that are pouring in and then the
Yeah.
volunteerism and, people cooking food for whole communities. So
Yeah.
yeah, there is a lot going on right now.
That's true. That's so true. Sheila, what about you? What are you thinking about in terms of like everything this energetically what's happening?
Yeah. So, we said the world, but I think I'm mostly focused on the United States at this point,
Yeah. Yeah. That's
which
true.
as a US citizen tends to be what we think of the world as. But
Sorry, everyone.
but to me, the movement, there's all these different pockets of things that might seem small and some that might seem big happening, but to me it's a turning of the tide, because with the buildup we've had over the years, now the shift from that into where we want to be seems to be taking place slowly in little pockets around the world, or
Yeah.
around the United
The
States,
States, right.
until it can kind of all explode together in my mind.
That's a good point. That's
Hmm.
a really good point, because I think, the United States, we here in the United States think that we're the center of the universe,
Nope.
sometimes to our own peril. But this country does have an effect
Mhm.
around things that are happening around the world, and it's important for America to mature, right, and
Yeah.
grow and
Yeah.
and evolve. So thanks for that. Listen, we've got a lot to go on here, but before we get started, I just want to remind our audience that, listen, you are part of this conversation. We want your questions, your comments, your thoughts. Just post them directly to the chat here on Facebook or on YouTube. And we will do shout outs to you. We'll get your thoughts right here with us live. And because this is an interactive conversation. Listen, again, as I said before, today is a complete hot topics day from news stories around the country. So buckle up, everybody. It is all about lions, tigers, and bears. Oh
Oh my.
Oh
my.
my. And Brian, you know that it's the Detroit Lion, or excuse me, Detroit Tigers opening day here in Detroit, Michigan.
All right, restore the roar. All right, fantastic. All right, go Tigers. Listen, our first story comes from time.com and from the Big Apple itself, New York City, where former President Donald Trump is set to make history. Actually, he made history on Tuesday by being the first former president to turn himself in to be arraigned on criminal charges. The arraignment comes less than a week after Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg indicted Trump. Now, Trump pleaded not guilty to all 34 counts of felony falsifying business records, and he was released from custody on his own recognizance. This means that he did not have to post bond in order to be released. Now, this is a standard practice for white-collar offenses per New York law. Now, Trump's lawyers are expected to file motions disputing the charges filed by prosecutors. They will have 45 days following the arraignment to present pretrial motions. They could ask for the case to be dismissed, a reduction in charges, or ask to prevent certain evidence from being presented at the trial. Common motions often ask the judge to dismiss the case in the interest of justice or because evidence against the defendant was obtained illegally by the government. So, big news over the last couple of weeks. A former president has now formally been indicted and arraigned.
Yeah.
So what do you got? What are your thoughts? I'll go to you, Sheila, first. I'll go to you first for your thoughts and reactions to this.
So like I was saying before, to me, it's one step towards the movement that we want in a democracy. And in this case, really a step towards having our court system actually be fair in some way. It's a step towards that, right? So, we pretend that we have one court system, but really there's, like you even just said in this, if you're a white collar offense, if you have the money, you have the people, you don't stay in jail or need to put up bail. You go home.
That pesky thing named bail, you don't have to pay that. Right?
Yeah, well, that's just for the the serfs, right? So, so to me, this moving forward and feeling that, we've all known no, I'm going to take that back because about what I'm about to say after this doesn't fit with that. But, I have an assumption that Trump has done things that are not really legal. So it feels good to know that at least it's going to court to be seen.
Right.
With all of that, there's something that I saw this morning that just really, to me, brought that home because, the Central Park Five, the five boys who were arrested and served time in jail, in part a lot because Trump did everything he could to ensure that the public opinion swayed against them, including paying $85,000 in promoting that. So there was an open letter from one of the five exonerated, because they have been exonerated. And it's so beautiful and so profound because he says in it, the one thing that that I didn't get, and that he hopes that Trump gets the one thing that I didn't get, and that is presumption of innocence. So I'm following his lead and doing my best to presume, to presume that he's innocent until proven guilty.
Right.
But he also then says, he closes by saying, and if the charges are proven and you are found guilty, I hope that you endure whatever penalties are imposed with the same strength and dignity that the exonerated five showed as we endured our punishment for a crime we didn't commit.
Wow.
And to me, that just struck home, like the combination of Trump being arraigned and and this letter. It's like, okay, I think we're moving somewhere.
Yeah. Wow. What about you, Dr. Chanel?
Well, so Sheila, when you said he hopes that, the former president moves through this process, I think, did you say with strength and dignity or honor? Or,
yeah, that he endures, right? Well, we can all hope.
I'm sorry, but so he's already, before he was arraigned, he was warning of death and destruction.
Right.
He was continuing to incite, uproar and violence. And, fortunately, I think the mayor of New York sent a bold message that none of that nonsense would be tolerated in the city of New York. But it's interesting that even in his pre-arraignment state, he could still be having that kind of rhetoric.
Mhm.
So in my mind, this for me all goes back to the integrity of the office of the presidency.
Mm,
And
mm.
what I think about when you talk about, okay, United States is the hub of the world, what our allies are looking to the United States when a former president can be, arraigned and indicted because of hush money
Yeah,
and a cover up
yeah,
of payments on how they were documented on the books. And that's, I guess, the essential of the charge when it really boils down to it, that falsifying business records is a crime in New York. It just feels like our integrity of the office of the presidency is somehow compromised in my mind, especially because you are still allowed to run for
you're
presidency
Right,
right,
that's crazy,
as a
right.
arraigned, indicted, and I believe even if you're convicted,
Yes,
did I read
that
that,
is
Ryan?
that is
So I
true.
I don't understand that how most of our, a lot of our people of color, or if you're a convicted felon, you can't sometimes get a job.
right.
And so
Right.
you're saying that if he's convicted, he can still run for presidency?
Yeah.
I do not understand that. And to me,
Yeah.
that compromises our office of the presidency and
Mhm.
our standing worldwide as, the leading nation of this world.
Absolutely. So a little bit more on that. So for people before we take our first break here, can Trump still run for president? The short answer is yes. Even if Trump is convicted, the charges against him will not disqualify his bid for the presidency. Legal experts tell Time. There is no constitutional bar on a felon running for office, says Richard Hassan, an election law professor at UCLA Law School. The U.S. Constitution only lists three requirements for the presidency eligibility. The president must be a natural born citizen, at least 35 years old, and have been a resident of the U.S. for 14 years. By the way, states cannot add to these requirements, such as
Mhm.
barring felons from running for office, meaning there is no legal impediment to Trump continuing his presidential campaign while facing criminal charges, even if he were to be jailed. Wow.
So is this the case that no one could ever foreseen a former president being a possible
Yeah,
convicted felon?
exactly. I think that um, the issue has always been that I don't think people, we thought we had all these norms, right?
Mhm.
That Trump's kind of like blown through all those norms, and it's like we're now scrambling around. What do we do about it? We're gonna take another quick break. We got more hot topics coming up, including something that's happening and been happening in Mississippi for the last 30 years that you may not have known about. So we're going to take a quick break and we'll be back with more of This Morning with Soulivity.
Have you ever asked the question, if I was to be anything, what would I be? Regardless of money, regardless of status, beyond popularity and fame. Living your passion, feeling your life has purpose. Soulivity is a space to nurture that which lives in all of us. A place where work can become play, and doing what we love creates the dreams of a lifetime.
And we're back with more of This Morning with Soulivity. I'm joined by my beautiful co-hosts, Sheila Applegate and Dr. Chanel DeGuzman. Hello, ladies, again.
Good
Hello.
morning.
Listen, this is a total hot topics day where we're talking about different news stories from around the USA here in the United States. And this next story comes from the great state of Mississippi. And it's something that I think a lot of people may not know. They know about it in Mississippi, but maybe not in other places. And this story comes from the Mississippi Free Press, and it reads, for the fourth year in a row, Mississippi Governor Tate Reeves has signed a proclamation declaring April as the Confederate Heritage Month in Mississippi, keeping alive a 30-year-old tradition that former Republican Governor Kirk Fordice first began. Black people make up 38% of Mississippi's population, which is the highest for any state. Now, the proclamation that he signed reads in part like this. Whereas, as we honor all who lost their lives in the Civil War, it is important for all Americans to reflect upon the nation's past, to gain insight from our mistakes and successes, and to come to a full understanding that the lessons learned yesterday and today will carry us through tomorrow if we carefully and earnestly strive to understand and appreciate our heritage and our opportunities that which lie before us. Woo! Woo! Who wants to take a stab at this one? Because this has been going on for 30 years, y'all.
Right.
I mean, Brian, it makes me feel like, okay, so he's saying it feels like it's being whitewashed in terms of, well, let's make this into an educational moment where we're learning from our past. And
right.
Cover up, it's just being whitewashed to preserve the sons of the Confederate veterans
Yes.
and their, quest to, enter a war that they, lost, that continues to disenfranchise the residents of the state of Michigan, particularly the Black residents. So it doesn't feel genuine. It feels like there are, they have their own agenda and they're trying to preserve their legacy, which is not uncommon than other ways that we see, white privilege, I don't know. I don't know the word, but that continues to be, trying to be preserved, the history and the legacy. But at the same time, he says, well, we can't have critical race theory because we don't want to humiliate our young white kids into thinking that they have to bear the burden of slavery.
Yep.
So you're talking out of both sides of your mouth.
Yes.
So maybe Sheila can help me understand.
Oh, no.
He was like, no. I love your sister,
Tell
but
me
no.
what's going on.
I do not speak for white Southerners.
No, Sheila, I meant help me understand.
Oh, from a higher consciousness.
The higher consciousness. Oh, no, I'm sorry, Sheila. Please forgive me. No, help me understand, Sheila, because I don't get it.
Okay. So the only good spin I can take on this is it's coming out, right? This has been going on for 30 years. As a Northerner, I had no idea,
Me
and
either.
I really didn't know until the last, I don't know, 8 years or 4 years or 5 years, that how much the South was suppressing the truth, and the whole campaign that the war wasn't over slavery. And so the only positive spin I can take on this is that it's starting to be seen, right? And because it's being seen, we can call it for what it is, and that the younger generation is realizing what's going on instead of just being infused with this doctrination. So, and there was there's one former government speaking up against governor who signed it and spoke up against it and said that it shouldn't be ever have started, and I shouldn't have signed it.
Yeah. I mean, I think that that most of these governors down in Mississippi understood that they had to pledge something to these folks to win in Mississippi, or they thought that they needed to. And it was let's see here, it was Governor Ronnie Musgrove, who served as governor from 2000 to 2004. And he said that I cannot say why the practice started, but it was one that should never have been started. It was one that I should have not signed, and it should have ended a long time ago. Just really quickly before I get to my thoughts on this, the main group that Dr. Chanel, you were talking about before, that is in support of this and that these governors paid homage to, was the Sons of the Confederate Veterans. And this is a neo-Confederate organization that promotes lost cause myths that downplay slavery as the primary cause of the war. And that these heritage groups promote a whitewashed version of the South's role in the Civil War that has often made its ways into textbooks in the state and throughout the country. The historical record makes clear that slavery was the primary cause of the Union split and the subsequent Civil War. Beyond just the obvious of the whitewashing of the reasons behind the Civil War and the obvious systematic racism that something like this actually puts forth, because this is actually systematic racism, right? You're signing something that puts into a system that creates this narrative over and over and over and over and over again, and that it goes into our educational system, right? But I just thought it was just so heinous that the governor was signing this in Jackson, Mississippi, which is the state's capital, right? While Jackson, Mississippi still doesn't have water and other things. Jackson, Mississippi is going through a degree of turmoil that we haven't seen since the Flint water crisis, right? And I just thought, I'm like, okay, this dude's like, whatever, guys, keep buying bottled water. We're going to sign this declaration one more time,
Well, Brian, when you think about, the systemic racism and the white supremacy, I was reading in that same article where, based on the remnants of Jim Crow laws, that it's still a felony. So felony voters are disenfranchised. There's a felony voter disenfranchisement provision that remains in the state law and continues to disproportionately disenfranchise Black voters to this day. So a felon voter, right, in the state of Mississippi
can't vote for a felon candidate.
So the heinousness.
That's so crazy.
But Brian and Sheila, I will ask you, what about the outcry? And this could be because of the disenfranchisement of those 38% Black citizens of Mississippi.
Yeah. Why don't we take a break? We'll take this up right on the other side, okay? We'll be right back with more of This Morning with Soulivity. Hey there, this is Brian with Soulivity.com. I want to share some exciting news about our new Aspire Academy by Soulivity. Now, you probably want to know what the Aspire Academy by Soulivity is. Well, it exclusively connects you with people around the globe and who share the intense desire to improve themselves and create a better life for themselves today. There's classes, there's workshops, there's live events, and even more exclusively just for you. You see, I wanted you to have a safe space where you could grow, you can learn, and it would empower you in all aspects of your life, including your mind, your body, and your soul. So how do you get started? Well, it is so easy. First of all, the best part, joining Aspire Academy is absolutely free. Just click on the Join Now button, sign up, and begin your journey. As a special part of this invitation to you, there are some free courses that are available
for you to try from our amazing roster of coaches and collaborators. It's our way of saying thank you for all of your support and being with us along our journey of expansion. I hope you enjoyed the Aspire Academy by Soulivity today. Start the process. Learn more about your passion, your purpose, and how to live a higher quality life.
And we're back with more of This Morning with Soulivity. Remember, to our audience, listen, we want your comments and thoughts. Just remember to post them right to our live feeds on Facebook and YouTube, and we'll do a shout out and get you included in our live stream. Dr. Chanel, you had a great point about what was happening down in Mississippi in terms of the disenfranchisement of voting that's there, that even relates to our first story on the indictment of former President Donald Trump.
Yeah, Brian. So I was just saying that, yeah, the disenfranchisement um, uh, of the provision that disproportionately disenfranchised Black voters is still on the books today.
Yeah.
And so it's almost like, okay, as I'm also saying, okay, well, where is the outcry of those 38% Black citizens of Mississippi against this commemoration of the Sons of the Confederate and the Confederate Heritage Month? But then you also have to realize that there's still disenfranchisement still going on. So I'm
Right.
not sure how you settle that, but I just know, for example, like, so Brian, here, like in Ann Arbor, Michigan,
Mhm.
people will they will uprise over the most salient things,
Oh yeah. Oh
and
yeah.
they just don't tolerate, like, even here in Michigan, like there's a border on 8 Mile where there are, certain things that happen on one side of 8 Mile that don't happen on the
Yeah.
other side because it's
Right.
Oakland County versus Wayne
Right.
County. So I'm
Right.
just
Right.
saying, and I know this goes pretty deep, but just wondering, and I know the young people are now, like you said, Sheila, getting more involved, but for 30 years, this has been commemorated, this
Yeah.
Confederacy Heritage Month. And so it's just calling and asking for what can we say about that?
Mm. Mm.
Well, they're completely denying any systemic racism, and then
Yeah.
the kids are getting taught that in school, no matter what race they are, right? So not that
Right.
they wouldn't know, but the suppression of people, it sounds to me like the suppression is still so intense that they're not
Yeah.
it
That
isn't
that people
the
can't really, come
speak
out
up.
against it.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and if they
Mhm.
are gonna speak up, is this the most important? I mean, you can see it as it all fits together, but if you're in
Mhm.
the middle of it, is this the most important thing to stand up for?
Well, and I guess like what Brian said, if you don't have water, you're probably not trying to worry
Right.
about,
A
Confederate
Confederate Day.
Heritage
You're
Month.
right.
Right. And I think and before we move on to our next topic, my response to that is, this is one of those situations where federal law, like the John Lewis Voting Rights Act,
Mhm.
needs to be passed in Congress, because
Right.
some of these things will disappear, right? So,
Mhm.
like, some of this stuff, it goes in hand with things like the Voting Rights Act, the more provisions of okay, it's not pre-selection, but you have to pre-authorization for changes to voting law had to go to the federal level from those states, because Mississippi was one of those states. That doesn't need to happen anymore. So they just gerrymandered all the districts up,
Right.
and even if it's 38% of Black people because that's a lot of power,
Mhm.
Mhm.
they get that it's all diluted now.
Mhm.
You
Right.
know,
Mhm.
we need to talk about that. I'd like to maybe we'll do a show specifically on those effects and talk more about the importance of the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, because I don't think that that's getting enough coverage either.
Mhm.
Sure.
Listen, we've got another great story that is coming out of right here in the nation's capital, where former Vice President Mike Pence will not appeal a judge's ruling that requires him to testify in front of a grand jury exploring the January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol, a spokesman said on Thursday, likely setting up a pivotal moment in the special counsel investigation related to former President Donald Trump's efforts to overturn the 2020 election. Pence's decision to drop the appeal means he will probably testify under oath about Trump's attempts to pressure him, and he could be a key witness. Trump and his team could still appeal the ruling, but they have lost similar cases previously. Pence is likely to testify this month, though the date is not settled, an advisor said. And this story comes from the Washington Post. Wow. Like we said, a lot of stuff going on. So Donald Trump gets indicted the same week that this happens, where Pence says, no, I'm willing to testify.
But Brian, may I ask, just to start this conversation, why was he appealing the decision in the first place? I mean, the whole mob was after him.
Right.
So I don't know why.
Mind-boggling.
He still doesn't have to talk about the 6th, the day that they were trying to kill him.
Correct.
Right. And he, said, I think he was being interviewed by ABC, and he said, these are the things that I'm going to talk about, and then the other things will be handled in court. I don't understand what's behind the scenes there that would not want him to be forthcoming.
Right.
About what happened, especially because he was the object of the mob.
Well, I have an idea.
Okay, let's hear it, Sheila.
Let's go, Sheila.
I personally find Pence, and I've said this from the moment Trump was elected, I find Pence scarier than Trump because he presents as if he is sane to some degree, but he has all the same beliefs, and he's cunning and manipulative in a silent way, in my opinion. So he is planning to run. He is planning to run for presidency.
Right. Yeah.
And he's been playing the victim line now, right? Like he was trying to keep whatever Trump supporters, he could get, because he is still far right. And now it's like, well, I tried, but now I have to, now they're telling me I have to do this, so I will go, because now he wants Trump to go down so he can become president.
Right. And let's do some chronological things here. So we had January 6th, where him and his family were in jeopardy. I mean, remember, people, there was a noose on the National Mall waiting, and the January 6th Commission proved that they were going after him and Nancy Pelosi, right? I mean, armed. They were armed going into the Capitol, and if they had found those guys, they probably would have killed them. So that's one. Immediately after the January 6th, Pence says that what Trump did was, unexcusable and blah, 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 blah. But then when asked whether or not he was going to testify for the January 6th Commission, he refused to do so.
Right.
But then later comes out with a memoir, right? So who does that sound like, right? Where he details how he really felt about what was going on, where he's selling. And I think it's actually a pretty popular book, right? I think it's actually sold a lot. And then he, I think, Sheila, you're right. I think that he is going to run for president, and that he wants to keep Trump's supporters. I mean, he still says good things about Donald Trump. Like, oh, I love the things that we accomplished during our presidency. And he has this duality around the things that he believes they accomplished, which in essence was just one tax law, by the way, which we can talk about at some other point. But, he says that on one end, but if you were his wife, I mean, or his children, wouldn't you? That would be pretty hard for me to hear. If I was in danger that way. I mean, they were in what looked like it was a secure location, but I think it was like a garage or something like that. And they were there for hours,
Mhm.
not knowing
Mhm.
what the heck was going to go on,
Just-
right? Whew.
Yeah, Sheila, you make me think of maybe a Olivia Pope strategy for what you just described, in terms of now he has to come out, and that maybe that was very calculating
Yeah.
and
Oh, he's
calculated.
calculating.
Yeah.
He's calculating, I
Mm,
think.
mm, mm.
I think. And you know, when you get to the bigger theories on how you overthrow a democracy, and you have someone come in and like disrupt it the way Trump did, and then you have a savior come in,
Right,
and that savior carries it forward.
right.
So what is the story there? You know?
Exactly. Exactly.
Interesting.
Listen, we're going to go right on into our next story, which is, for some of us out here, which is a good news story, but it's still news from around the country. And this comes from the great state of Wisconsin, and theguardian.org, which I love the Guardian, which is, in a historic election, the liberal judge Janet Protaskiewicz won her race for a seat on the Wisconsin Supreme Court on Tuesday. Her win will flip the ideological balance of the state's highest court, which has been controlled by a conservative majority for 15 years. Now, elections and democracy advisors have called this election the most consequential one of the year, with abortion rights, redistricting, and the election rules at stake. The race pitted her, a Milwaukee Circuit Court judge, against former prosecutor against Dan Kelly, a former Wisconsin Supreme Court justice with ties to election deniers and the far right.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. So is that our first? I'm saying, yay. There's a lot happening in Wisconsin that I think a lot of people don't like, in Mississippi to a certain degree, but in a different way. Wisconsin is part of the so-called blue wall, right?
Mhm.
I think there hasn't been a Democratic president that in recent history that won the presidency without Wisconsin.
Right.
Yeah.
Mm.
And so there has been a concerted effort by conservatives there to create not only supermajorities or actually outright majorities in the state legislature, but as I just read, that there has been this conservative majority that's been not just center right but far right, where they have allowed Wisconsin to jury rig and gerrymander that state, to where, even though I think that state's Democratic, if you go from political party, it's actually a conservative minority in Wisconsin, but they have now, I think there was a news report that came out where there was a special election and the conservative won, and now they have a supermajority in the state house. So that gives you some idea of how much it's jury rigged there. So any reactions, ladies?
Well, I'm just looking at the amount of money involved, Brian, right? So this
Yeah.
talks about the Race Smash campaign finance records for state judicial elections drawing more than 45 million, according
Yes.
to politics analysts,
Yeah.
in comparison to 10 million in 2020. So I don't know. Did money carries the vote of the day, right?
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. I mean, this was a nationalized state election, right?
Yeah, because it has such an impact.
This has such an impact. Just to let people know, I mean, part of this had to do with when the Supreme Court overruled Roe versus Wade in June of last year. There was a pre-Civil War law on the books that banned abortion, that went back into effect once Roe versus Wade got overturned.
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah. It happened in several states.
Yeah. Yeah.
And she campaigned against that. So she campaigned for women's right to choose
Yes.
and to stop the gerrymandering or the
Mhm.
restriction. And so one of the positive things is that and she won by 11-point win, which is
Yeah.
incredible. They called it so early.
Right.
So now that she's on the court, they can now reinstate or overturn
Turn.
this law so
Right.
that
Mhm.
that they can have abortion again.
Mhm.
And it'll affect the rest of the country. And hopefully how Democrats campaign in the future by going forward, by being strong in what they want as far as
Mhm.
pro-choice and pro-democracy.
Now, I hate to
Mhm.
be Johnny Raincloud. There is some concerning news still in Wisconsin. As I said earlier, there was a special election in Wisconsin, and voters decided that the Republican Dan Knoll was their candidate. It was a close election, but he won. And now the Republican Party has a supermajority in the state Senate, paving the way for that party to impeach state officials, a process which Knoll said he would consider launching to pull Protaskowitz from the Supreme Court.
Wow.
So it ain't over yet, y'all. So
Clearly.
it ain't over
Mhm.
yet. I mean, so talk about outrage. I can only imagine if that happens there,
Yeah.
what the people will do, and the kind of protest that would happen. Listen, y'all, we're gonna take a quick break. But when we come back, we'll come back with some final thoughts about all these things that are happening in the United States. Right back.
Hi there, Sheila Applegate here with some exciting news. I've joined the incredible Soulivity team as the host of the new Consciously Awesome live show, where I will be sharing insights to help you discover your full brilliance and claim the vibrant life you deserve. So tune in every Wednesday right here on Soulivity TV to join the fun, and remember to subscribe to the channel so that you don't miss a single episode. Have an awesome week, and I will see you on Wednesday.
Have you ever asked the question, if I was to be anything, what would I be? Regardless of money, regardless of status, beyond popularity and fame. Living your passion, feeling your life has purpose. Soulivity is a space to nurture that which lives in all of us. A place where work can become play, and doing what we love creates the dreams of a lifetime.
And we're back with more of This Morning with Soulivity. I'm going to go to final thoughts from you, Sheila.
I was thinking about all the topics we've discussed, and even though they may not seem connected, to me, there's really a theme, and are we moving forward as an evolving consciousness, and are we moving forward in reclaiming democracy, or even actually evolving the democracy that was created hundreds of years ago? And it can be really disconcerting, because it feels like a movie, right? Where we're just, trying to fight the villain. And it's important to remember the movement and to take time to celebrate even what may appear to be small victories, and in order to keep moving, and then also to stay aware. But the truth is, it is a small majority of the United States that is actually this far right, racist, white supremacist power. And if we work together, we can overcome that.
Yeah, I like that. Dr. Chanel?
Oh, Sheila, I'm glad that you said what you just said, because I was thinking, and I hope I'm not judgmental, Brian, but these recent incidents that we are experiencing right now, you want to take a breath, but you really can't, right? So a lot of this common denominator involves white men, white powerful men, whether they're loud or undercover. And forgive me, but I'm just going to say the women on the side, right? Even when you think about President Clinton, right? So there were women, and if I'm not mistaken, they were white women. And I think about the money, the power, the politics. I think about the integrity of the office of the presidency as, wanting it to be impeccable and pristine, but it's occupied by humans, which we are imperfect. But at the same time, I just ascribe to a high standard of right from wrong. I mean, just when it boils down to it, and being able to, set an example of dignity and honor of the highest office of the land, not only for our country, but for the entire world. And versus the water crisis in Jackson, Mississippi.
Right. Thank you for that. I think my thoughts are a combination of both of yours. I think that when we see this convergence of different stories that are interrelated, that have to do with movement of the soul, that also includes things like social justice and ending systematic racism, systematic discrimination, fairness. I mean, all these kinds of concepts, we need to be taking notice, and we need to ask ourselves, what are we embodying in this moment to help propel us to do the work that needs to be done? Remember, be, do, have, right? So, are we, I mean, it's okay to get angry about some of these things that are happening, but what is that anger driving you to do? Is it donating to a certain cause? Is it, volunteering for service for a certain activity? Is it actually you going out and actually being part of a protest of certain things? Is it, posting a comment? I mean, whatever you're led to do that, right? Let yourself be part of the change that you want to see. So, wow, great show today.
Very encouraging words, Brian.
Oh, well, thanks. I try to stay, in touch with myself and all that kind of stuff.
Absolutely.
Listen, while we have time, I know both of you have some really cool things that you're doing with clients and helping people change their lives. So, Sheila, what's going on?
Well, we're nearly at the 8th of a month again. So April 8th at 8 o'clock p.m., I will be doing the Matrix of Illumination right here on Soulivity, Aspire,
Right.
where I open up to spirit and bring forth messages that can help us as we evolve as a society.
Perfect. And we'll put that link in the chat so that people can learn more about how to sign up and what's called. That's always really cool. That's always a really cool thing.
It's one of my favorite things. I really enjoy
Yeah,
that.
Yeah, you
absolutely.
can hear energy.
And Dr. Chanel, what about you?
Well, Brian, we're in a new quarter. So whatever you didn't accomplish in the first quarter, maybe you will look to the spring to spring forward and, continue to have a strong being. Like you said, from a strong being, you get to do and have different things that you really want. And so continue to offer my one-on-one free consultations just to see where you are, where you want to go, and how we can get you there. And I was stealing your tagline, Brian, real conversations that empower.
That's all right.
Thank
You go
you.
ahead on with your
Thank
bad
you.
self. Wow, there's so much going on. I'm putting the chat in the chat, the thing for the Matrix of Illumination really quickly so that people can have that. Wow, so many things happening with Soulivity. We've got some great new features, including stories from Dr. Carl Truesdale, who is a fantastic celebrity and renowned plastic surgeon. He's only in his 30s and he's on Beverly Hills, y'all. So he's doing some fantastic things. And I don't know if either one of you are familiar with the hit series on Stars called BMF,
No.
Black Mafia Family. One of the stars, Rayan Lawrence, is part of that series, and we did a exclusive interview with him on soulivity.com. So you want to go there and check all that out as well. Listen, while we have a minute, I want to remind each of you to follow us on social media or join our mailing list to receive exclusive content and notices about when we're going to be doing giveaways. Wow, again, this was a fantastic show, everyone. Thanks for being part of this, Sheila, Dr. Chanel.
Thank you
Yes.
both.
Woo,
So good to be back together.
back together again. All right, well, we're gonna see you later. We're a little bit over time, but until next time, keep on having real conversations with passion and purpose and create a high life of high quality living today. See you next time, everybody. Bye.